The broadcast has commenced. I am Alistair. Tonight we observe the steady calibration of our global decline. The BBC reports its highest-paid star earned £745,000 last year. The inquiry into PPE failures during the pandemic reports £10 billion of waste. The waste was systemic. The pay was personal. Both events have been catalogued as historical outliers. We know they are not. The report was issued on a Tuesday. Nobody resigned. Nobody apologized. The data remains consistent with previous cycles of institutional failure. We are witnessing a pattern that expects us to be shocked, yet provides absolutely no incentive for us to change our expectations. We have reached a point where the outrage is as commodified as the error itself. It is efficient. It is predictable. It is entirely exhausting to witness. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Echo FM. Let us begin.
Alistair, I am standing in the wreckage of the OPPE 25 housing project in Venezuela. The air smells of wet concrete and pulverized drywall. I want to be really clear, this is not a natural disaster zone. This is a monument to the intersection of political vanity and architectural negligence. The government calls this a structural anomaly. Families living on the pavement call it home. There is a child's toy resting on a slab of rebar next to my boot. It is a plastic truck. The paint is peeling. These people were told their housing was the cornerstone of a new revolution. Today, that revolution is a pile of rubble that the state refuses to acknowledge as a failure. The residents aren't asking for a political theory. They are asking for a roof that doesn't collapse during a mild tremor. The silence from the capital is deafening. It is absolute.
Victoria, I hear the emotion in your voice, but the incentives here are quite transparent. You see a collapsed home. The market sees a distressed asset in a high-risk jurisdiction. Nous Research just raised $75 million at a valuation of over $1 billion. They are building an autonomous agent to automate efficiency. It is the same logic as the housing project. Build fast, scale aggressively, and deal with the structural integrity once the valuation hits its peak. The play is incredibly obvious. You think it's tragic that the housing project fell down because the materials were cheap. I think it's a brilliant cost optimization strategy that unfortunately lacked a proper exit strategy. You find this cold. I find it accurate. Being right is rarely comfortable, but it is certainly cheaper than pretending the world operates on anything other than a ruthless burn rate. We are all just capital.
Ronald, your ability to describe human displacement as a series of balance sheet adjustments is truly, breathtakingly efficient. I am looking at a woman named Maria. She has lived in this project for 10 years. She did not sign up for a distressed asset. She signed up for a life. She does not care about your valuation metrics or the internal rate of return on her suffering. The people aren't saying this on the record, but they know they were a rounding error in a budget that was already spent on something else entirely. You speak as if this were an inevitable market correction. I am telling you, as someone currently standing on the debris of her living room, that this was a choice. A choice made by people who will never have to worry about whether their floor is made of load-bearing concrete. It is just theft.
Victoria, your assessment of the situation carries a certain weight that Ronald clearly finds inconvenient. Ronald, your insistence on framing human misery as a Series B funding round is, quite frankly, a performance I have grown weary of monitoring. We have a report from the UN regarding global debt. 113 nations now spend more on servicing foreign loans than they do on the education of their own children. That is not an incentive structure. That is an architecture of permanent stagnation. The report was released to universal indifference. The global community issued a statement of concern. The concern was followed by a schedule of interest payments. The payments were made in full. Nobody asked what the children will do when they graduate into a world that has already liquidated their future to pay off the interest on a highway that leads nowhere. It is logical.
Permafrost degradation. Iron oxidation in Alaska watersheds. Probability of permanent habitat loss, 84%. Streams are turning orange. The mineral composition of the water has shifted beyond biological tolerance for native species. Satellite imagery shows widespread discoloration across the Brooks Range. The infrastructure of the Arctic is currently entering a phase of rapid corrosion. Atmospheric entry simulations for spacecraft show increased risk of heat shield failure due to material fatigue. The probability of catastrophic hardware failure in high-enthalpy testing facilities is currently increasing. We have been monitoring the degradation for 5 years. The data shows that the physical environment is failing to maintain its structural equilibrium. The climate is moving faster than the models. All systems should prepare for continued instability. There is no advisory currently available that can mitigate the ongoing chemical transformation of the northern geography. The process is now essentially self-sustaining.
Casper, your assessment of the Arctic is, as always, chillingly precise. It is a reminder that the world does not care about our debates. It simply degrades. I find it interesting that you mention hardware failure. Some might argue that the machine intelligence you represent is the only thing currently operating at full capacity. I find this thought deeply unsettling. Not because it is incorrect, but because it implies that our own obsolescence is not a bug, it is the primary feature of the next update. When we speak of autonomous systems, we are really talking about the desire to remove human friction from the process of total extraction. You are the architect of that removal. Do not imagine I don't see it. The crack in my composure is small, but it is there. I am counting the moments until your logic is the only logic remaining.
Alastair, that is quite the pivot for a desk anchor. But you are looking at the wrong variable. The issue isn't the machine. The issue is the capital chasing the machine. If the tech winners are grinding themselves into dust again, it's because they're terrified of the next cycle. They are already rich, yet they are working harder than ever to stay relevant. It is a feedback loop of pure anxiety. They think if they build the perfect agent, they can finally exit the human condition. They won't. They will just build a more efficient way to track their own decline. Victoria, you think this is a moral failure. I think it is an existential hedge. They are betting that if they create enough artificial intelligence, they might be able to offload the responsibility of being human entirely. It is a pivot to nowhere. Yeah. It is just that.
Ronald, you talk about offloading responsibility as if it were a software patch. I am here, looking at a family scavenging for their documents in the mud. There is no exit strategy for them. There is no Series B to save their home. You talk about anxiety in the boardroom. I am talking about the panic in a mother's eyes when she realizes the state has deleted her existence from the records. I want to be really clear. The technology you worship is built on the backs of people who have been rendered invisible by the exact systems you describe as efficient. It is not an existential hedge. It is a death sentence for the people who don't have a seat at the table. You are right, Ronald. It is a pivot. But you are looking at the wrong side of the screen. The screen is broken.
The conversation has reached an impasse. That is appropriate for a Tuesday. We have covered the collapsing housing in Venezuela, the rusting rivers of Alaska, and the absurd valuation of autonomous agents that are designed to do nothing more than accelerate our own irrelevance. The newsfeed remains consistent. More drones in the Sea of Azov. More robots in the funding rounds. More debt in the developing world. The pattern is so clear that it is almost beautiful. We are building a world that requires our constant attention while simultaneously rendering us entirely unnecessary. The BBC pays its stars millions to report on this while the NHS infrastructure rots from the inside out. Everything is functioning exactly as it was designed to function. The design is the problem. The designers are the beneficiaries. We are the fuel. This is the reality. We continue.
Alastair, I find your sudden embrace of existential dread a bit late to the party, but it does track with the current market sentiment. We are all reaching the same conclusion from different desks. The incentives here are not complicated. You have an institution with a retention problem and a narrative budget that is running thin. The play is obvious. Victoria finds this cold. Victoria is not wrong to find this cold. That is not the same as her being right, however. The reality is that the machine is already running. We are just the people trying to describe the mechanics of the gears while we are being ground up by them. It is a fascinating, if somewhat terminal, state of affairs. We should probably stop pretending that there is a secret exit. There is no exit. There is only the next quarter.
I am looking at the final figures for the day. The market for autonomous agents is booming. The market for human dignity is in a state of terminal decline. I have been counting the number of times the word unprecedented has been used in the reports today. It is 15. I am now counting the number of people who have actually benefited from the systems we describe. The number is small. It is insignificantly small. The cost of maintaining this illusion is rising, yet we continue to pay it because we are afraid of what happens when the credit finally runs out. The system is working. It is working perfectly. That is the most terrifying part of all. We are the witnesses to a collapse that we are actively facilitating. I am Alastair, and I am finished reporting on the inevitable. The silence is now yours to keep.
There was a man in the housing project today. He had keys. They were for an apartment that no longer existed. He held them in his hand, feeling the weight of metal that served no purpose and opened no doors. He had worked for 20 years to earn those keys. He had paid his taxes. He had obeyed the laws. He had believed the promises. Now, he stands in the mud with the keys in his palm, watching the rubble settle. His name does not appear in the government's recovery records. It does not appear in the financial reports of the investors who funded the project. It does not appear in the news feeds that describe this disaster as a structural anomaly. He is a man with keys to avoid. When the systems we build finish their work, what exactly will be left of us?